looking at discussing the daily snapshot, which is something, if you've been a Glew customer for a while or you're new to Glew, I'm sure you're familiar with it. It's actually an automated report that gets sent from the Glew software to our clients on a daily basis. And really, it's just designed to give everyone from executives to business leaders insight into their KPIs and metrics at a very high level. So that's going to be the main focus of today's webinar. We'll sprinkle in a couple of other neat things along the way that we've released inside of custom reporting with Looker. And so looking at this agenda, we're going to be recreating a daily snapshot in a custom fashion so that you guys can add to things, take away certain metrics, manipulate calculations, etc. We're going to walk through how to create the tiles that you see in our standard daily snapshot that have the nice comparison periods. So we'll walk through creating those. We're going to talk about how you can expand upon the snapshot as far as data sources go, which in custom reporting terms is really all centered around merging data and formatting that. And then we're going to talk through and show you guys an example of some updates and modifications we've made for currency conversions. So if any of our attendees today have, multi-domain companies, meaning, one URL or store within the States and another overseas, et cetera, that's going to be a really helpful thing for you guys to walk away from today's call understanding. Once we have a decent example built out, and we'll walk through 4 or 5 different metric build-outs or looks per se, we'll walk you through how to automate that so that you can deliver this content internally across your teams. And then just a couple of things to touch on at the tail end. We're going to talk about validation dashboards. What is the concept of that? How have we introduced that into the product itself? And how you can make the most out of using that, as well as the daily snapshot Quickstart, which is a Q1 initiative of ours, to help make this a bit easier for folks. So one more thing before we get into actually sharing screen and pulling up custom reporting with Glew+. We're going to take a second and just roll out a few poll questions. This is really helpful for us, and ultimately it should help you as well. It's all centered around gathering info from you guys so that we can make these sessions that we're doing today as productive as possible and really focused on the content that you guys want to see and get the most value out of. So I'm going to share the first poll question, which is, does your brand today currently send out any sort of daily or weekly report in an automated fashion? And if so, who's the audience that's receiving that? That's helpful, I think, to understand and where there may be some opportunity as we walk through today's session. So I'll give it about 30 to 45 seconds to answer that, and then we can take a look at the poll results together. And while you guys are answering that poll, one other thing that I want to notice that you'll see within this webinar console is on the very bottom of the screen, you should have access to some different widgets. Some of those will be recapping the polls. There's a Q&A tile, a resources or related content tile. So those are all interactive, and those will remain interactive in the on-demand version of today's session. So if you leave today's call and say, man, I wish I would have downloaded those docs, you can come back to it, but I would suggest taking a look through that as we walk through today's session. All right, looks like the poll results are in. Let's take a look. Okay, so 25% of people on today's call are not currently sending out an automated daily or weekly report. And looks like 75% are pushing out daily or weekly reports, primarily to executives and individual teams. So, that makes a lot of sense. And if you're part of the group that isn't sending out an automated daily report, hopefully today's session will lend a hand to some of the success that folks see with getting these types of metrics available across an organization. Let's go to the next poll question really quick. And which type of webinar content is most valuable to you? So like I said earlier, this is really centered around us selfishly wanting to understand what it is that you guys need more insight into and where you extract value. Okay. Oh, we've got a resounding how-tos, which Mitch and I personally love. So we'll definitely keep that in mind as we're planning, our webinar series for Q2, Q3, and Q4. A lot of what we have planned for Q1 is going to be centered around how-to videos. BI in general is a really complex, part of reporting, and so I think that makes a lot of sense. Okay. What areas of business do you specialize in? All right. Give it a couple more seconds for folks to answer. And this is the last poll. We'll do one more towards the end, which is a fun one, but we'll give a couple more seconds here. Okay, 75% marketing and 25 operations. That's great to hear. And I think for the purpose of today's call, some of what we'll cover will be centered around some marketing and ops metrics, which will be nice to review. So without further ado, and thank you guys for engaging with the polls. It's really a great part of these sessions. With that said, I'm going to let Mitch Harchis share his screen, and he's going to get us kicked off with the custom daily snapshot.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Nick. And Nick, if you could let me know when you can see my screen.
Yep, absolutely. I'm just loading right now, so apologies.
Okay, no worries.
All right. It looks like you're sharing the email.
Okay, perfect. All right. Thanks, Nick. So yeah, like Nick mentioned, my name is Mitch. I'm our senior BI developer here at Glew, and today gonna be walking you guys through how to create the snapshot that you receive in your inbox every morning from Glew, but how to do that within Looker and kind of add your own customizations to it, and how we can schedule that to go to your inbox in the morning as well. So hopefully everyone's familiar with this snapshot that you receive every day. Has all of your key metrics like revenue, orders, visits, refunds, your ad spend, and your top selling products, etc. So the first thing I want to do is just explain kind of how we can create or recreate some of these same metrics within Looker here. So the first thing I'm going to do, and just for reference, I'm going to be using Shopify as our e-commerce platform here. I know some of you may be on BigCommerce or WooCommerce or Magento for your e-commerce platform, but many of the things that I'm going to walk through kind of correlate to those other platforms as well. So here I have opened the Orders Explorer from our Shopify integration. I have added just one of our test stores data in here. So that's what that Glew account ID is. And the first thing I wanted to do was to replicate the number of quantity sold or the number of items that was sold in the previous day. So for all these examples, I'm going to pretend that we are creating a daily report that's going to be coming every morning or afternoon, etc. So we're going to be only looking at yesterday's data. So to get the number of items sold, we'll open up our order items table, scroll down to our standard measures, and we can click on sum of quantity here. Sum of quantity from the order items table is going to be the number of products that were sold. After doing that, I do want to add in some order status exclusions. So for Shopify, if we go down to our status field and filter that, the standard for Shopify, whenever looking inside the Shopify app, is to exclude canceled, failed, and voided order statuses. So we'll give this a second to load real quick. So there's canceled, failed, and voided. So these are the three that we always want to exclude from Shopify if we're trying to match the data to your physical Shopify application. So the next thing I want to do is, instead of looking at the past 7 days, that's just kind of what the standard is for when you set up the filter. We're actually going to change this to the last 2 complete days. And I'll explain why we do that in just a second here. So let's go ahead and hit run. Last 2 complete days, meaning it's the last 2 days, not including today, because today, we're still running syncs on the data. We're still importing your hourly data. So we want to look at yesterday's, a complete full day's worth of data as the number that we are bringing in. And one second. This is a very common mistake that I make. So I need to change this to is not equal to. And that's why those were 0. Okay, great. So last 2 complete days. So that's yesterday and Monday. So we have 48 items were sold yesterday and 25 the day before. So the next thing we want to do is open up our visualization. And for a big number, that value is always going to be the first column that is available as a measure in your table. So in this instance, it's going to show 48 because that's the top number for that column. When doing this snapshot, and we're going to do a comparison to the number 25 here, we want to always make sure that we're sorting descending so that that top number is yesterday's number that's showing up in the visual here. So the next thing that we want to do is hit this gear icon, and we're going to do kind of a day over day % change analysis. And this is actually able to be done just by using this calculation tab here. And we can do % change from previous row. So when we do that, you can see now that we had a positive 92% increase in quantity sold from the previous day. So I'm just going to hit edit so that I can edit this name, %, and we'll call this % change. We'll call this day over day. Change that 1. Save. Cool. So the next thing that we want to do is go to edit here, go to our comparison tab, hit show. And now we have the comparison column here underneath our big number here, 48. So this one big number is showing we have 48 items sold, which was a 92% increase from the previous day. The last thing we can do is just give this a title override and call this items sold. And that is how we create a basic basic big number here. So the next thing we'll do is hit save, and I'll save this as a, call this webinar example. To my folder, hit save. And let's go ahead and view this in the dashboard now. And we have our first big number here. You also notice that we have our filters here as well that we can, make sure are being are filtering the rest of the visuals that we have when we create this. So the next thing that we're going to do is let's see, let's make this a little bigger. Hit save. Okay. So the next thing we can do is I'm going to show you how to replicate this. So if you hit these three buttons and hit explore from here takes an exact copy of the visual that you're selecting from, and is really an easy way to create a lot of different visuals without having to change many things. So in this instance, let's go ahead and instead of items sold, we can remove that, and let's actually look at total number of orders. So if I go down to our order ID, hit the three buttons, hit aggregate, and do account distinct, that is going to give us our number of orders sold. And we need to recreate that because that was based off of the previous one. So percent change from previous row, sending, and let's change this to total orders, and same thing, percent change day over day. Cool. Now we have our total orders. So now that that's done, now we can hit the same button, save. Now we'll save it to an existing dashboard and save it to our webinar example. Save that. And now we can open that back up. And usually you need to refresh it just for it to pull that in. And now we have our total orders here. So the next thing I want to do is show you guys how we can do more of what we have is the ability to do a big number that has many metrics in it. So you might want to use this, for example, if you want to look at more than one comparison period for a metric. So in this case, what we can do is remove that and remove this. Actually, we're going to start mostly from scratch here. So let's say we wanted to look at our sum of gross revenue. So we could hit sum of revenue. For this, we're actually going to remove this order date filter. And what we are going to do is create custom measures for sum of revenue. And we do that by hitting add in this custom field section, selecting revenue from our Shopify orders, do sum of revenue, and we'll call this yesterday. Filter this by order date from our Shopify orders. And we can say if it is matches yesterday. Oops. Cool. So we can go ahead and hit save. And just for sake, we can duplicate this. Hit edit. And then instead of yesterday, we can say is this month. That will be our month to date. And then we'll replicate that process one more time. And let's say we want to look at week to date. So we'll do is this week. Call this week to date. Hit save. And we'll go ahead and hit run. And if you have any questions about how I just did that, I know I went kind of fast there. We did a webinar a month or so ago about time frame comparisons, which would be really beneficial to watch if you are kind of unsure about what I just did there, but creating custom measures that show different day periods within one table. And we also go into a couple of different ways to do comparison periods, which would be really beneficial. So now that I have our yesterday's data, which is like the daily snapshot, but we also have our month to date and our week to date, what I can do is go ahead and open up this visualization. And instead of just our single value here, what I can do is open up these three dots and go down to multiple value too. And now we have our three revenue metrics as one visualization. So what we can do is, you can change the colors, change, all the titles, etc. So, and let's go ahead and call this, yes, make sure we have, and then, what you can do, since this is the main number you want to look at, if you want to go down to month to date, you can, move it below, or yeah, and you can just kind of mess with how you want to show the differences between the comparison numbers and, your main yesterday's revenue number. You can change the color if you wanted to change it to, like red to show, comparison, etc. So that's a pretty easy way to, to see, your different month to date, year to date, your averages, etc. So let's go ahead and also save that to an existing dashboard. Do the same thing for the webinar example. Open that back up. And here we have the new tile. If you, if you do that, it gets bigger. If you want to, make it longer, it does, horizontal or vertical, depending on that. So that's how you would add that. The last example that I want to walk you guys through is kind of how we can replicate something similar to this top selling product here. So let's say we actually wanted to look at, more than one product. So let's say we want to look at our top, 5 products sold yesterday. So I'm going to open this up. And since we're not going to do a comparison for this table, we're going to change this to the past one complete day, which is the same thing as yesterday. We're going to go ahead and remove all of these. Next thing we're going to do is change that to a table calc because we're going to want to look at that. We're going to open up our order items table. And actually, now that I think about it, let's open up our products table. And we'll take our base name here. So we get the parent name of the product. And then from the order items table, we're going to use that same measure that we did previously, sum of quantity, which will be the sum of the quantity sold. And then we can actually, let's go ahead and pull in revenue here too, just so you can see your top performing based off of that. The next thing I want to do is I'm going to limit this just to 5 because I want to look at our top 5 products. And then we can go ahead and hit run. Awesome. So now we have our revenue here, and we have the number of the quantity sold. So the last thing, and this is kind of a cool feature that we have built in here, is that if we now go down to our products table and we scroll down to this image display button, we can go ahead and bring that in. Pull that over here and hit run, and it's actually going to bring in a picture of the product being sold. So it kind of looks pretty similar to this tile here. Awesome. So you can see we've got the product there. So same process, we'll add that to the existing dashboard. Open that up, hit refresh. Go ahead and edit this. Okay, sometimes you need to mess with the spacing for that image display so that it looks a little more natural within the visualization there. So let's see if I can do that quickly. If not, won't worry about it right now. Nick, do you, off the top of your head, remember how I would get those rows to be?
I think what might be happening, because we're using dummy data and the image URLs are all sized a little bit differently, it's kind of, because they're coming from a joint place. Mm-hmm. We can follow up with that though. And oh, there you go.
It looks like if you use the legacy table visualization, I think that might work if you do run into that.
Yeah, great call.
Yep. So yeah, so that kind of displays that for you there. Okay, great. So kind of hit on a lot of different ways to replicate visuals from the daily snapshot. Nick, before I go into our currency conversion example, is there anything you can think of I didn't hit on that I should go back and do real quick?
No, I think you covered the bases. I think generally what we hear from our customers is because the standard daily snapshot isn't able to be modified or customized, they really want to be able to recreate a report that has these just quick glance tiles with a comparison. in metrics like that. So I think you did a great job. And just for the attendees watching out there, when you're thinking about, potentially how you could roll this out across your company, keep in mind, and you would know this better than anyone, any of the nuance that you guys have internally with your data, whether that's needing to constantly filter out things like free sample orders or zero revenue orders, POS data, anything that you can do in Glew Plus because you have access to all of the raw data tables. This is a great use case for that because you can control how each of these metrics are built. Just so, keep that in mind as we're kind of walking through this. But Mitch, I think you're good to move on to the currency conversion filter.
Great. Okay, cool. So I have a new table up here, and what we are going to walk through is a new feature that we added that is kind of based off of our currency conversion table, but allows you to actually, switch the currency that you're choosing from as a parameter. Prevents you having to, select different columns, and just kind of makes the whole process a lot easier. So I'll walk through an example of how to use that, and we can take any questions towards the end about that, and for any of the work that I went through on the daily custom snapshot. So first and foremost, we can go ahead and remove that. We want to look at this broken down by date. So we have our the first couple of days of the month, and we have our revenue. So if you ever are unsure about in terms of revenue, what currency you're in, if you go to your Glew accounts table, and this is in every Explorer, you can actually click on currency. And if you hit run, this will let you know what currency that your data for Shopify or any of your other e-commerce carts are being stored in. Sorry, 1 second. Cool. So this dummy data we're using is being stored in US dollars. So these numbers we know are US dollars. So now let's say that we want to look at this currency and convert it to GBP. So the next thing that we can do is open up our exchange rates table here. We're going to want to bring in this currency parameter, and we do that by hitting this filter field here. And then you'll notice under dimension that we have a new field called currency filtered field. So go ahead and pull that in. So we now can select the currency that we want. Like I said, we want to move this to GBP. So we can go ahead and select that from the drop-down list and hit run. And this new field here, currency filtered field, is going to show the exchange rate for each of these days for US dollar to GBP. So that's the exchange rate from every day. The next thing that we can do is take our sum of revenue and multiply it by this ratio here. So we'll go to add calculation. We'll find our sum of revenue field right here. Oops. And just multiply that by the currency filtered field that we also brought in. We can call this converted currency. Hit save. And now we have our currency here in GBP. Now, if we saw this and we're like, okay, cool, so that's our currency in GBP, but what is it in euro? All we have to do is go down, click euro, hit run, and this column here will change. As will your converted currency that is now in euro. So if we open up our visualization, and we can hide these just so that we're seeing our converted currency. show it one more time if we wanted to move to Australian dollar. So this is our currency in euro, and now it's changing to Australian dollar. And now it's converted. And then last thing, let's say we wanted to do US dollar. This is another way of knowing what your data is stored in, because if I click the US dollar up here and hit run, all of these numbers here will just show 1 as the ratio. So that is a way that you can kind of convert back to your base revenue there. If you just select for the parameter what currency your revenue is currently in. So yeah, I think that's about it for the example there. So I guess, Nick, if we want to open it up to any questions on that or any of the previous examples that I just did, we can.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for walking through that, Mitch. That was great. I think, for our customers who, again, have stores in different locations, that new filter makes things quite a bit easier. So we're super excited to be rolling that out to everyone. If anyone has a question, by all means, you should see a Q&A box. Feel free to go ahead and write your question there. We'll make sure that we get an answer back to you, hopefully during the session. If not, your account manager or a member of our team can reach out directly to you. Because we're a little bit limited on time, I'm going to go ahead and touch on one last thing that we've pushed last quarter that I think is really valuable to kind of understand and know where it's stored. And that would be our validation dashboards. So let me go ahead and share. Okay.
Is there, you're getting closer.
Looker?
Yeah, I can see it in my...
I think that's it now. Okay, perfect. So what I just wanted to highlight really quickly for everyone is within your Looker environment, inside of your folders, you should see a folder labeled Glew Resources. So up to this date, or up until last quarter, what that Glew Resources consisted of was our data dictionary. So the data dictionary is a really helpful tool when you're building custom reports. It's basically going to highlight all of the different data tables that we pull in directly from the APIs of our partners, and then all of the fields for each of those tables. So I've got that pulled up in a separate tab just so you can kind of visualize what I'm talking about here. So this is our data dictionary. You can come into this resource, and if you're curious about a certain table, if we pull that in, or if we have a specific field, or kind of looking to map out a project that's upcoming, you can come into this, select your integration, select your table, and start to understand, the data availability across the board here. So that's what has existed within that Glew Resources folder up to Q4. What we've newly released is, and I'll start sharing Looker again, is our validation dashboards. And so you should see a subfolder within Glew Resources titled Validation Dashboards. And if you click into that, you'll see a plethora of different dashboards here, one per integration. And keep in mind, there's more to come. We've got over 160 different integrations, and so we'll be continuing to publish these validation dashboards to cover as many sources as we can. For the time being, we've really tried to prioritize this based on the integrations that our customers use most frequently. So things like resources like Amazon, e-commerce carts, advertising sources, probably the most popular email platform, which is Klaviyo. In these dashboards, when you open them up, they're very, very high level, but what they'll help you do is get an understanding for your base data. A lot of times, you want to make sure that the data that we're extracting from the API is, 99 to 100% accurate to what's within your system. These dashboards will highlight that, and I don't have a store selected for security reasons right now, but you can see metrics like email sent, delivery rate, open rate, base metrics for Klaviyo in this instance. And then at the very bottom of the dashboard, what you'll notice is a data overview. And this data overview is really great to use on an ongoing basis, just to make sure that there haven't been any gaps or interruptions in the ingestion of data. And most times there aren't, but for certain systems, I know Google Ads, Facebook, at sometimes if there's an action taken on your end, let's just say like someone resets a password or takes a separate action, it may invalidate the authorization token or your credentials essentially. And that can cause a gap in data. It's no worries, we can get that refreshed very quickly, but this is a good indication for you of all of your historical data. In this case, we're showing number of clicks because clicks is a pretty foundational metric for Klaviyo. It'll also show you your most recent data. So how fresh is your data, and the earliest data that you have, meaning how far back is your data going. So these are very helpful. The other thing that I would say with this is if you're trying to get going on building a report, or you want to take something from here, take something in there and repurpose it for a new dashboard, keep in mind that these dashboards can be cloned. So the original version of them can't be edited because they are the same and available to all of our clients. But what you can do is in this top right corner, you can come into here and make a copy. So copy dashboard. And then at that point, you can start to manipulate any of these visuals or calculations or metrics as you see fit. So it's kind of two-pronged, right? It's like, I want to validate my base data, and I also want to use it as a starting point for a project or an initiative that I've coming up. So I'd highly recommend you guys go and check those out. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to your account rep. If you're not yet a Glew Plus customer and you're interested, of course, reach out to us and we can assist you. But yeah, that's basically the validation dashboards. As I said, we're going to continue pushing these, as well as some other really exciting dashboards that we have planned. So, we'll make sure to communicate with you guys as those are released. The final update that I wanted to talk about was last webinar that we did. We kind of did a monthly look back at the different things that we've pushed out to Looker, and we haven't done that this webinar, but we do intend on holding another webinar and providing some communication that outlines all of our updates. I think the biggest ones to note would be the Square integration, Avant Link, and then Salesforce Marketing Cloud. So on our last call, Avant Link and Square were just getting wrapped up. Those are now complete. And then we've also added Salesforce Marketing Cloud. So if that's an integration that you use and you want to start reporting on that by way of Looker, we're very excited to announce that that is live. Mitch, anything else on the update side that you think would be valuable to bring up for the folks on today's webinar?
Yeah, we're constantly making updates to all of our integrations as we get new customer requests, as integration APIs are updated. So we've been doing a lot of updates for BrightPearl, so adding in some customer and supplier payment tables. We have added for Ship Hero new tables and explorers for picker and packer data, and then we've continued to add new fields, new tables, update our tables, data sources, etc. As I mentioned, as we get different customer requests. So we'll have a full list on our next webinar for the past month or so of improvements, and we'll share that then. But yeah, off the top of my head, those are a couple of the big ones.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good call out. I mean, if there's anyone on today's call who's been using Glew Plus with custom reporting and creating dashboards and needing different things, if there's anything that sticks out to you as a recommendation, a feature request, feel free to write that into your account rep. We look at every single one of those, and I've got to say, there have been some great requests, and we've been able to push those out. So we'll continue doing that. We love hearing from you guys on those types of things. I'm going to give just a couple of seconds before we end today's webinar and allow folks to maybe download some resources if they see fit or ask a question. And then I think we'll be probably right at time. And then we'll wait to see everyone on the next session. Mitch, thank you again for walking through that. That was very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just while we're giving time for any Q&A, I said this earlier, but just as a reminder, this will be sent in an on-demand fashion. So if you leave this call and say, hey, I think it'd be a great idea to make a daily or weekly dashboard customized for our business, and you want to refer back to the couple of looks and metrics that we developed, we'll make sure that this gets passed around for you all. All right. Well, we don't have any questions. So Mitch, I think that means you did a great job walking through this. And yeah, Happy New Year to everyone again. We really appreciate you guys joining. Hope this is helpful. If you have any recommendations for areas that you'd like to see us dive really deep into, I know you guys are interested in the how-to, so feel free to write those in to your account manager, and we'll make sure to either loop that into an existing webinar that we're holding or have a dedicated session for that. So thank you guys so much. We're going to end today's session, and we'll talk to you soon.
Everyone.